Hi, I'm Mrs. McDonald, and I'm here to share a story with you. I'm sharing the story called The Quilt Maker's Gift. Before I do, though, I want to show you a few things. First off, many quilts nowadays are made by machine. Here's one. This is my bedroom set. We have in my room. It's made by a machine, and we bought it at a store. But most precious is when somebody actually makes a quilt or makes something for you. This was not a quilt, but this is crocheted. This is an Afghan, and this was made by Nathan's grandmother for me, and it's humongous, and it takes a lot of work, but this takes a lot of work. So if anyone ever gives you something homemade like this, you know that they love you. And then this is another crocheted Afghan, and it's precious to me because it was made by my grandmother, and I know you probably can't tell this on the video, but my grandmother made this when she was very old. She lived to be 100 years old, and I know she was probably over 90 when she made this. And see how it doesn't square up because the bottom of it's longer than the top. It's because she was old and she couldn't see, but she made this, and it's very precious to me. And then this is actually quilt, but it's not hand sewn. It's sewn on a machine, but my sister made this, and she made it to be a tablecloth, but I've never used it on a table. I just refuse. But at any rate, it's beautiful, and my sister made that, so that's precious to me. And then here, I've made a few quilts with a machine for my kids' beds and things. But this is the latest thing is Sammy, my son Sammy and I made this, and he did most of it, but I thought I'd show it to you. This is a quilt that we whipped it together on a machine. We did not do this with great detail. The Smithsonian, and then gymnastics, and then down here, I'll show you this one. He used to love wearing that shirt. You know who that is. Well, anyhow, that's the closest thing to a homemade quilt I have. But I'm going to go ahead and read this to you, and this is just a wonderful story. It's a story about love. The Quilt Maker's Gift. Has beautiful artwork. I really highly recommend that you actually buy this book. But then you can really look at the artwork. There once was a quilt maker who kept a house in the blue misty mountains up high. Even the oldest great-great-grandfather could not recall a time when she was not up there sewing away day after day. Here and there, and wherever the sun warmed the earth, it was said she made the prettiest quilts anyone had ever seen. The blues seemed to come from the deepest part of the ocean, the whites from the northernmost snows, the greens and purples from the abundant wildflowers, the reds, oranges, and pinks from the most wonderful sunsets. And see, here's her quilt, and it almost blends in with all those beautiful flowers. Here she is, and just like this spider is weaving a web, she is weaving a quilt, sewing a quilt. Some said there was magic in her fingers. Some whispered that her needles and cloth were gifts of the bewitched. And still others said the quilts really fell to the earth from the shoulders of passing angels. Many people climbed her mountain, pockets bursting with gold, hoping to buy one of the wonderful quilts, but the woman would not sell them. I give my quilts to those who are poor or homeless, she told all who knocked on her door. They are not for the rich. On the darkest and coldest nights, the woman would make her way down the mountain to the town below. There she would wander the cobblestone streets until she came upon someone sleeping outside in the chill. She would then take a newly finished quilt from her bag, wrap it around their shivering shoulders, tuck them in tight, and tiptoe away. Then, the very next morning, with a steaming cup of blackberry tea, she would begin a new quilt. So here, let's see. Here you can see her tiptoeing. And here, let's see. Oh, there she's, is that her again? Yes, here she is with a quilt. And here she is tucking someone in. See, they're covered up with a newspaper. Now, at this time, there also lived a very powerful and greedy king who liked nothing better than to receive presents. The hundreds of thousands of beautiful gifts he got for Christmas and his birthday were never enough. So a law was passed that he, the king, would celebrate his birthday twice a year. When that still wasn't enough, he ordered his soldiers to search the kingdom for those few people who had not yet given him a gift. Over the years, the king had come to own almost all of the prettiest things in the world. Throughout the castle, from top to bottom, in drawers and on shelves, in boxes and trunks and closets and sacks, all of the king's countless things were stashed. He had so many things that he didn't appreciate any of them. That's just my opinion. Things that shimmered and glittered and glowed. Things whimsical and practical. Things mysterious and magical. So many, many things that the king kept a list of all the lists of the things that he owned. Look at all that. You can't even make one thing out there for having so many. There's a knight in armor and a clock. Here's a doll. There's so many things that it all looks like a bunch of junk. And yet, with all these marvelous treasures to enjoy, the king never smiled. He was not happy at all. Somewhere there must be one beautiful thing that will finally make me happy, he was often heard to say, and I will have it. One day, a soldier rushed into the palace with news about a magical quilt maker who lived in the mountains. The king stamped his foot. And how is it that this person has never given me one of her quilts as a gift? He demanded. She only makes them for the poor, your majesty, the soldier replied, and she will not sell them for any amount of money. Well, we shall see about that, the king roared. Bring me a horse and 1,000 soldiers. And they set off in search of the quilt maker. But when they arrived at her home, the quilt maker merely laughed. My quilts are for the poor and needy, and I can easily see that you are neither. I want one of those quilts, the king demanded. It might be the one thing that will finally make me happy. Look at that. Isn't he full of something? The woman thought for a moment. Make presents of everything you own, she said, and then I'll make a quilt for you. With each gift that you give, I'll sew another piece. When at last all your things are gone, your quilt will be finished. Give away my wonderful things? Cried the king. I don't give things away, I take them. And with that, he ordered the soldiers to seize the beautiful star quilt from the quilt maker. But when they rushed upon her, she tossed the quilt out the window, and a great gust of wind carried it up, 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 and away.